Hello, my Hoobie Fruits. I am delighted to be here and be making this video. Today, honestly, not started out too well. My watch charger nearly caught on fire. It literally has just stopped smelling like burning plastic. It was really nasty. But anyway, I hope that you guys are doing way better than I am, and we're gonna crack open this book and read about a horrible person named Harold. We can call him Horrible Harry. Horrid Harry. Horrid Hair? Anyway. Chapter 3, University of Texas Hospital, Austin, Texas, 2:07 a.m. Dr. Harold Wurf was fed up. New Year's Eve was so tedious. What with all the overdoses and drunk driving accidents, it seemed as if half the hicks in Austin needed their broken bones mended or their polluted stomachs pumped. Not that Harold did much mending or pumping, of course. He wasn't exactly a doctor, not yet. He was a resident, so legally he couldn't perform certain procedures. True, he was the youngest resident at the hospital, and at the ripe age of 20, the youngest person in history, yes, history, to graduate summa cum laude from the University of Texas Medical School. He thought of himself as a doctor, he deserved to be a doctor, and he certainly was a great deal more gifted than many of the doctors here. But for now, he could only run errands, draw blood, insert IV tubes, and observe the older people at work. He was tired of observing. At this point in the night, he was just plain tired. He was more than a little annoyed at having been assigned the grueling 32-hour New Year's shift. He'd started at noon, and he wasn't even halfway through with it. What a crock, he thought. He strolled through the brightly lit, antiseptic hallway of the emergency ward, avoiding the stretchers that rolled past him and the doctors hurrying toward yet another catastrophe. Obviously, he was well aware that he'd been assigned this shift because he was brilliant and reliable, but didn't he deserve a break? His peers were out partying or watching their kids or getting laid or whatever people in their late 20s did on New Year's Eve. But alas, he was here. He was a certified genius, for Christ's sake. There was no justice in this. Then don't become a doctor. Seriously, if you don't want to put in that kind of work, don't go to medical school. Harold, I hate you so much. Anyway. Harold Wurf, a metallic voice announced over the loudspeaker. Please report to the nurse's station immediately. Harold Wurf to the nurse's station. Harold snorted. What now? Did somebody need a band-aid? If only some of the nurses were even mildly attractive, he wouldn't have dreaded the nurse's station so much. Aha! There was a patient in room 324 right at the end of the hall. He'd nearly forgotten about her. She was attractive. She was downright sexy. Yes. Long black hair, curvaceous body, about 25 years old. She very well might need some company. What was she here for? A concussion? Some sort of head wound? He picked up his pace. Yes, the nurses would have to wait for a minute. First, he would work on his bedside manner. Yes, he's planning on coming on to a woman who very likely has a concussion. I'm telling you, Horrible Harry. That's what his name should be. He paused outside the woman's room. The shade had been pulled over the window. He took a quick moment to study his reflection in the glass. Not bad. His wavy, longish brown hair framed a smooth jawline nicely. His ice blue eyes and broad smile were irresistible as always. No, not too shabby at all. It had been a good decision to let his hair grow these past few months. He straightened his white lab coat and then rapped on the door. Hello, he said. Yes, came the soft voice. What is it? Harold grinned. Her voice was sexy, too, with just the perfect trace of a Texan accent. I'm Harold, one of the residents, he answered in deep, intimate tones. I just wanted to check up on you. There was a pause. Harold could hear the faint memories of a TV set. Okay, she replied after a moment, but a nurse was just in here. Harold pushed open the door and stepped into the room. It's always good to double-check vital signs in case of a head injury, he said reassuringly. He closed the door behind him. Damn, he thought, giving her a quick once-over. She was gorgeous. She was propped up in bed, in a skimpy little hospital gown, her large brown eyes glued to the TV on her night table. Her lips were full and red and parted just a little bit. Black hair cascaded from a thick white bandage around her head past her shoulders. Have you been checking this out? She asked. What's that? He took her wrist and gently felt for her pulse. It was on the fast side, around 104 beats per minute, but she could very well be excited by him, too. "The news," she said, gazing at the television. Her eyes had a dull, glazed appearance, but that might be due to her injury. "There's been one of those special reports. You know when they say we interrupt your regularly scheduled programming? It's totally freaky." She shook her head. "Wow, totally freaky," Harold repeated disdainfully to himself. So this woman wasn't going to be winning any Nobel Prizes. Of course, stupid women often made easier scores. "What's freaky about it?" he asked with a friendly smile. His fingers lingered on her wrist. "They're reporting all of these blackouts everywhere. New York, Washington." She reached for the remote control with her free hand and switched channels. "It's on every single station. It just happened like 5 minutes ago. They lost contact with the news desks in all these cities." Harold nodded disinterestedly. "Blackouts. Okay, yes, that was bizarre, fascinating, etc. But he had other things on his mind. He needed to distract her attention from the screen. He let his forefinger wander toward her palm, brushing the skin suggestively. Her eyes drifted down to his hand. "Good," he thought, "that's much better." "Easy there, Doogie Howser," she said with a snicker. She slid her wrists away from him and pulled the covers over herself. "The nurses told me about you." For the briefest instant, he was consumed with rage at being humiliated by this ditzy fool, but then he forced the feeling aside. Losing self-control wasn't worth the effort. After all, he didn't want to risk his residency for a potential sexual harassment suit over this. But judging from the way she was turning back the TV with a wry smirk, it was clear she didn't feel threatened. No, she probably thought of him as nothing more than an eager child, and that made him angry. "My name's not Doogie Howser," he said after a minute. She giggled. "Yeah, but don't you remember that show?" Her eyes remained pinned to the screen. "Come on, you gotta know about it. It was about a kid just like you. Some genius kid who became a doctor." "It wasn't about a kid just like me." Harold flashed a phony smile. "It was about an ugly teenage nerd with bad acne. That isn't like me at all." "So you do know it!" she exclaimed. She glanced at him, then burst out laughing. Harold's smile faded. It was time to go to the nurse's station. If he stayed here any longer, he might say something he would regret. "Try to get some rest," he recommended, turning his back on her. "Your pulse is elevated." "Wait!" she commanded. Uh-oh, she wasn't going to get him in trouble, was she? He glanced over her shoulder. Her face seemed oddly flushed. She struggled to sit up straight. I could use some water," she stammered. Her voice was hoarse, gravelly. Harold peered at her closely. "Is something caught in your throat?" She shook her head. "No, I'm hot," she choked out. All at once, her face shriveled, as if she'd just caught a whiff of some powerfully foul odor. Tiny drops of perspiration appeared on her nose. "I don't feel too good." "Okay, just relax," he instructed, stepping swiftly back across the room. He shoved the last few minutes from his mind. The incident was over. Now he had a genuine crisis on his hands. He placed the back of his hand against her forehead. Christ, she was burning up. She twitched once. Her eyes rolled back in her head. "Damn it," Harold muttered. He leaned over her and jabbed the blue alarm button on the wall. The woman started tearing at her gown. She might be having an epileptic fit. Harold held his breath, waiting for the code blue announcement over the intercom. Nothing happened. "Come on," he growled. He punched the button again. There was still no response. What the hell was going on? Harold's eyes flashed back to the woman. Jesus. This was no seizure. It couldn't be. Evil-looking black welts were appearing over the entirety of her body. They spread with astonishing speed, like spilled ink. He'd never seen anything like this, never read anything like this in any medical journal. His breath started coming fast. Why wasn't anybody responding to the code blue call? He reached forward to hit the alarm one last time. Just as some of the welts burst, blood and pus exploded in his face. Terror consumed him instantly. He leapt back. "Somebody help!" he shouted, staggering toward the door. He clawed at the hot, sticky liquid on his skin. "Somebody help!" He threw open the door and stumbled out into the hallway. Then he stopped dead in his tracks. The hallway was deserted, completely and utterly deserted. Doctors, nurses, patients, staffers, everyone. They'd all vanished. But for some unfathomable reason, they'd also stripped, leaving their clothes abandoned in thick black puddles like discarded props on an empty stage.